Let's go to Genesis chapter 9. We kind of started this, and we're going to get the first couple paragraphs. I'll read it, we'll get through it real quick, and then get on to the new subject matter. But in verse 1 of chapter 9, God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you will fall on all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky, on every creature that moves along the ground, and on all the fish in the sea. They are given into your hands. Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you, just as I gave you the green plants. I'll now give you everything." So, the relationship between man and animal will change, specifically because God has turned over every animal as food. He wants to eat it, he can eat it. So why would he? So just rather than ask a question, and since he's going to do that for man, he's going to make it an even playing field, and he's going to make animals now scared so they can defend themselves. Why do you think he opened it up to you can eat animals now too? Partly, think about what just happened too. How much edible vegetation is there probably out there? I mean, you just flooded the whole earth. There's a lot of plants that they didn't carry. There's no mention of them carrying seeds or plants on the ark. And now you have that greenhouse effect is not in effect anymore. Climate is completely different, so there's probably not as much vegetation for man to eat or even animal to eat. So now it's survival of the fittest in a sense. Everything's now available to eat if you can catch it or find it. Verse 4, "But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it, and for your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal, and from each human being too, I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made mankind." So essentially, what is he saying there? So this is enactment of capital punishment. And the reason for that is why? Because God made them in his image, and they're special, they're higher up than all the other creations. So now, if you kill, your life it's funny this happens after the flood, way after 1,000 years after Cain kills Abel. So the punishment for murder prior to this would not have been capital punishment. So this changes as well. Of course, he says in verse 7, "As for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the earth and increase upon it." Who's he saying this to? So he said it, it says Noah and his sons in verse 8. Then God said Noah and his sons. So he's having this talk with Noah and his sons. So who's he telling to multiply? The three sons, and it sounds like he's probably telling Noah as well. What's interesting is whenever you have genealogies, you'll have so-and-so lived to this point, and he begat so-and-so, and then he lived another so many years and had other sons and daughters. It never says that about Noah. So it doesn't sound like Noah had any more children, and I think there might be a reason for that here in a minute we're going to talk about. It's a possibility. But anyway, he's telling them, I want you to multiply and cover the earth. Verse 8, God said to Noah and his sons with him, "I now establish my covenant with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that was with you, the birds, the livestock, and all the wild animals, all those that came out of the ark with you, and every living creature on earth, I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all life be destroyed by the waters of a flood. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth." So he's now, by this point, how many covenants we had? We've had a couple, haven't we? The first covenant with Adam and Eve in the garden. The next covenant is after they get kicked out. I guess you could call that a covenant. It's more of a curse. And then now you got this covenant. And guess what? There's going to be more covenants. And every one of them are almost like a second chance for man. But he says, "I'm no longer to destroy the earth." Well, did he destroy the earth? He purified it, he refined it, he changed it. So as far as, actual destruction, it's not, if you burn my house, yes, you destroyed my house, but you didn't destroy all my land. So I guess you could use this like that. But the earth itself still remains. It was just essentially changed and purified, and at least we hope it was completely purified. But we can pretend to find out it probably wasn't completely purified. But for the most part, it was cleaned a little bit. It got most of the evil out, for at least for a while. He says, "I have this in verse 12, and God said, "This is the sign of the covenant I am making between me and you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all generations to come. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life." Remember, he uses all every time he talks about this, because we've seen floods destroy life. "Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and all living creatures of every kind on the earth." So God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant I have established between me and all life on the earth." So, what's the sign of the covenant? That he will not destroy man with a flood again? A rainbow. Had they ever seen a rainbow before? Probably not, because it never rained. And you get rainbows essentially when light is, right, and I could be wrong on this, when light is refracting through moisture. And if you had all the moisture surrounding the earth, that would have changed. You wouldn't have had this rainbow visible. There might have been rainbows up there, maybe, I don't know, but not where man could see it. But what has happened to our rainbows? It's funny how evil the devil tries to take things and that God has used and use it for his good. How about the pineapple? The pineapple has what did it first mean?
First mean welcoming.
Welcoming and friendship and stuff like that, right? And now a pineapple signifies sexual misconduct. Upside down or something, I don't know. It doesn't matter, but it's still, they've taken something that meant something good. Me and you had that discussion about the t-shirt. So all our pineapples at our house are straight up. Anyway, but Satan, evil will take things that are good and twist it. Just remember that. All right, so let's get into this other stuff. This is where we'll have some discussion in class. Just probably take most of the class here, maybe. Verse 18, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. That's interesting. Think about that while they mention that right there all of a sudden. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the whole earth. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. He drank some of its wine, he became drunk, and lay uncovered inside his tent. Let's stop there for a second. All right, we got the three sons. For some unknown reason, they mentioned Ham's son, Canaan, even though we know they all have other sons. And Noah, being a man of the soil, what's he do? You think a vineyard is the only thing he planted? No, I think for them to survive, they had to plant other things. Now, how long would it take to plant a vineyard, grow grapes, and then make wine? Do what? It takes a couple of years at least. Grapes aren't the fastest growing things, and it takes them a while to get established. Very picky about their soil. So for him to get through this is years down the road. This ain't something that happened within the first couple of months of them getting off the ark. So we have this time transition here. It says when he drank some of its wine, he became drunk. So not only did he wine, he made fermented wine. This ain't just grape juice. He took the time to ferment it. He became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Why do you think Noah did this? The reason I bring this up is I always thought about Noah and his mindset. I don't think these three sons that Noah had were his only children, because it said he didn't have these guys until he was over 500 years old. I think he probably had other children, but these were the three that remained faithful. Not to mention everybody he ever knew other than these three sons and daughter-in-laws are what? Dead. Can you imagine how lonely and almost grief-stricken and depressed you might be? And you might even feel a little shame because you weren't able to reach other people to save them. So I don't know that I totally blame him. I'm not excusing his behavior here, but you can understand the state of mind he's in. The climate is different. There's probably not as much vegetation. It's a lot more barren. Even though this is a couple more years, it's probably better than when he got off the ark. This is 3 or 4 years down the road, probably. But when he's having kids, and he's not having kids, but he's having grandkids being born and stuff like that. So you'd think things would be on the up and up, but he's the oldest guy. And what happens is if you're the oldest guy on the block, everybody comes to you for advice and decisions, and there's probably a large weight on Noah's shoulders. Like I said, I'm not excusing his behavior, but he did this. He ended up in the tent anyway. He ended in there uncovered. Now, look at this. Ham, verse 22, Ham, the father of Canaan. There it is again. They mention Ham, and then they say the father of Canaan. Saw his father naked and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it across their shoulders. Then they walked in backward and covered their father's naked body. Their faces were turned the other way, so they would not see their father naked. When Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." This may take us a while, but I want y'all's thoughts. What do you think Ham did to Noah? There's about 3 or 4 prevailing thoughts, if I can remember them. All right, so what's the simplest, less evil of anything you can think of that this was about? So you got voyeurism, and I'm going to misspell it. So voyeurism. He just saw his dad naked. He comes out and he tells his brothers, "I saw Daddy in there drunk and naked." And then they took something backed up and covered him up. What kind of goes against that? What happens when Noah wakes up? He knows something has been done. But even just the covered, he knows that. In fact, he says, when Noah woke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him. And there may be other versions say a different way of doing it, but something physically happened to him for him to know. So this is a possibility, but it's low. Even though I got number 1, it's kind of low on the list of possibilities. Because why wouldn't he curse Ham here? He cursed Ham's son, Canaan. What's another possibility that Ham did to Noah? This one is far out there. I don't have a whole lot of evidence for it, but there are people that talk about this. Because it said that Noah, whenever you mention genealogy, it says this person lived this long, had this many children, and then he lived so much longer and had other children. Well, Noah, it never mentions him having other children. There are some people, I don't support this one, but there is a thought that he gets castrated. His son castrates him. Yeah, that's out there. And the reason they say that argument is you have 3 sons, Ham and Japheth. Which number son is Canaan in Ham's lineage? Is he the 3rd or the 4th? I think he's the 4th. So Canaan, I think, is the 4th son in the lineage. And so what this does is this keeps Noah from no more offspring, because it's a power struggle, and man can be evil, and they want it to be just them 3, at least Ham does. So that part of the argument for this is he castrates Noah so he can have no more offspring. Noah wakes up and finds out what's happened, so he curses his 4th son. So what Ham would have been doing was keeping Noah from having a 4th son. So he curses Ham's 4th son. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's an argument the scholars make. A third argument. I know y'all have heard this one. What's the third argument? What? I'm going to misspell that too. Maybe with an S. I don't know. Sodomized. That he essentially took advantage of his father and raped him. There is some rabbinic writings about this one. This is the simple version because this is what it says. The sodomizing thing, the argument for this one is when awoke, he knew something was happening. He knew something was wrong. That's pretty evil. We don't know, but it's long enough for him to plant a vineyard and ferment and make wine, so looking at 3 or 4 years. Exactly. They forgot why the world was destroyed. This was actually what I was taught growing up. I mean, it says because he saw his... Remember, what does it usually mean when saw nakedness? When the Hebrew term saw nakedness is brought about, that's usually a sexual act, nakedness. But there's a new thing that I had never heard until I started studying this, which actually makes sense. Look at Leviticus chapter 18. Somebody read verses 6 through 8.
None of you shall approach any one of his close relatives to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother, you shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife, it is your father's nakedness.
So, what's the fourth thing that Ham could have done? If uncovering your father's nakedness is the same thing as doing what? He has incest with his mother. And what happens is he goes out and he tells his brothers, I just had sex with mom. And they walk in and they cover up their naked parents.
That's a stretch.
You got all these nods over here. That's a stretch. We're going over one. Moses and Leviticus from God. Who came up with the fourth one? They come up with the fourth one because Levitical law calls the nakedness of your father is the nakedness of your mother. So that's why that's a possibility. All y'all got these faces, just guess what? None of y'all would think about doing that. At least I hope you wouldn't.
That's stretch right there.
You think this is more of a stretch than castrating him? They're all stretches. But let me ask you, which is more of a stretch in your mind on the punishment?
I think that's what you gotta have to look at, because if it was just one and that's all it was, then why was he not upset with the other two sons?
And well, why did he curse Canaan if all it was because of Ham looked at him naked?
I think that culture had a whole lot of reverence for the patriarch, and he probably demanded a certain amount of reverence.
I expect y'all to listen.
Lord your God.
I do appreciate you helping us stretch our knowledge and think without moving.
Hey, listen, I'm not planting my flag on anything. I want you to think about it though, because I see arguments for all four. We don't know. One of these days we can ask Noah. But I do know Noah had no more kids, and I do know that Shem, his fourth son, Canaan, is cursed. Why didn't he curse his other sons? Why didn't he curse? There's a lot of arguments for all these. But incest with the mother, there's actually precedence for that. Y'all, that's sick to us. But back then, guess what's going to happen to populate the earth? Shem's kid is going to have to sleep with Japheth's kid. So y'all got this modern day mindset, oh, that's gross, that could never happen. But guess what? There's a lot of things happening right now that's gross. Do y'all want to take the Bible literal? So you're going to have to get past this, that's gross, it could never happen, or you're going to have to say the Bible's not literal.
What about another possibility?
Give me a
I'm
fifth.
gonna read this. It's
All
not
right.
my word. No, my head.
Go ahead.
One possibility is that Noah's words were prophetic rather than simply punitive. Noah was foretelling what would eventually happen within Ham's family line. Canaan's descendants became the Canaanite people who would later encounter and dispose of the land of Canaan. Another possibility is the passage deliberately focuses on Canaan because Genesis is preparing the reader for the later conflict between Israel and the Canaanites.
Possible. Listen, I don't have a good reason. I know that regardless of what happened, I think it's bigger than just seeing him naked. If you look at Leviticus, that's the definition. The nakedness of your father is uncovering the nakedness of your mother.
Or never go in a drunk, naked man's tent.
Never, that would be the lesson. Don't ever go in a drunk. Nothing good ever happens in a naked drunk man's tent. Nothing good ever happens. So I'm glad you punctuated the lesson for today. So he said, don't ever go in a drunk naked man's tent. No, I think this is the kids' class. I'm just having to manage the romper room. Anyway, I'm not supporting any one of these. I think there's a possibility for all of these. I just want to present these. These are the four thoughts. And Jeff interjected a fifth thought as far as why the punishment. Not exactly what happened, but why Canaan was the one cursed. Let's look. In verse 26, he also said, praise be to the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be the slave of Shem. May God extend Japheth's territory. May Japheth live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be the slave of Japheth. So Canaan, it's funny that it still misses all of Ham's kids. But we know what Canaan is going to do. Canaan is going to take over the area which is going to be the promised land. This is going to be the Amorites, and I think the Hittites, and a few of these other ites that they have to throw out. After the flood, verse 28, after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah lived a total of 950 years, and then he died. You see, there's no more mention of any other kids. Whereas in other genealogies, they would have mentioned and he had other children. There's no mention of this. I mean, he still would have been young enough to have kids if he had wanted to. This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. This is chapter 10. Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. Sons of Japheth. Now, where the sons of Japheth? All right, so let me get my board. This is where y'all love when I write on the board. I know. Turkey, close in between Syria and Iraq. Think about that. If you can think of a map. You got the descendants of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madam, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. All right, Japheth, and there are places where you can go that talks about where all these people went, where all these descendants went. But typically, Japheth is understood that his descendants were Asia and Europe. These are your white folks, a lot of your white folks, okay? Have some that go in the Middle East, but this is for the general part. Japheth, then you got Shem, which is, I haven't gotten to that yet because it talks about more of the sons of Japheth. Shem is going to be your descendants, but a lot of Middle Eastern. I mean, I think Babylon's part of their area. A lot of the Middle East, okay, if I was going to draw the Middle East. I mean, just because descendant of Shem doesn't mean they had to be Jewish, okay? We talk about Semitic anti-Semites. Anti-Semites would cover all this, not just Jewish people, although we kind of think of Jewish people. And then Ham covers a lot of and the Middle East, okay? So this is where, of course, you got Canaan. You got part of the northern, like where the front word would be, okay? Because we got Canaan there. All right. So these are the general areas, but I want you to look, who's the second son of Japheth? Or the second son mentioned anyway. Where have y'all heard that name before? In Revelation, you got Gog and Magog. Well, scholars that I read said Magog colonizes Russia. And that's a commentary I read, and it actually goes through all these people and where they went eventually. But remember, this doesn't happen right away, okay? We can, of course, just thrown in, it just essentially repeats a lot of the same stuff, because Chronicles, that's just what Chronicles does. The descendants of Ham is Cush. They actually have named Egypt in the NIV. I think a name for a different name used in other versions. Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. Fourth. Mizraim, that's what they use instead of Egypt? Okay. So you got the west part and then part of Africa here. The sons of Cush were Seba, Sabta, Ramah, Sabtika, Sheba, and Dedan. But Cush, here we go. I may not this one yet. Cush, we got Ham down to Cush. And who is Cush? Who Cush have as a son? Nimrod. Yeah. You know why? Dog Looney Tunes. Yeah. We watched Bunny look at Elmer Fudd and go, "Hey, you little Nimrod." So I always took that. Well, he's calling him an idiot. So we took that up, called, "You're just a Nimrod." Well, we always thought Nimrod meant idiot. Why was Bugs Bunny calling Elmer Nimrod? Hunter. He was a hunter. So look at these verses on Nimrod here. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth. So some scholars believe this is another Nephilim. I can't prove that. He was a mighty hunter of the Lord. Now, that verse, that line means something there. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Some people think that this means he was against God. Okay? Which we find out later that he is. The first centers of his were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh, and Shinar. So Shinar is kind of like is Babylon, kind of that area, Iraq. He went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Resen, which is between Nineveh and Calah, which is the great city. So essentially, Nimrod is this great, huge, strong tyrant who is against God. That mighty hunter before God, it means he's against God. So you've got this guy going around building cities, putting people under his control. It says he's a mighty warrior, which is the same kind of terminology they use in Genesis chapter 6. So there's a chance that he's kind of one of these Nephilim. He founds these places kind of like, I could be wrong on this, Uruk is one of those Mesopotamian areas that had a lot of literature about people living a long time and being giants and being strong. He also built Nineveh, which is going to be, part of Syria. So this great big guy that's ruling all these people. Then it goes on, talks about Egypt and Canaan. We'll skip all these. But essentially Canaan, all these places that the children of Israel are going to have to get rid of eventually. First Chronicles repeats all this. We have the descendants of Shem in Genesis 10. Japheth was the older, but was going to be kind of more important. Shem was the ancestor of all the sons of Eber. The sons of Shem, Elam, we're going to stop. That's what we'll pick up as the descendants of Shem next week.